Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a system called NewsTrace, and it's a big deal. It's all about trying to bring some serious order to the wild, chaotic world of modern media by completely rethinking what media intelligence can be. So, let's just start with a huge question. Think about it. In a single country, you can have over 10,000 journalists. So how on earth are you supposed to keep track of who's writing what, where they're writing it, and why any of it actually matters? The simple answer is, you really can't. It's just chaos. And if you're a professional in communications or PR, you know this is a nightmare. Trying to manually figure out who's who takes up a crazy amount of time. Forget about analyzing things in real time, it's practically impossible. And all those important networks, who influences who works with who, they're completely invisible. There just aren't any standard tools for this kind of work. But what if technology could actually provide an answer to all that chaos? Well, that's exactly the idea behind NewsTrace. It's a centralized intelligence system built from the ground up to bring some much-needed order and clarity to this incredibly complex world. So how does it work? It follows this really clear four-stage process. First up, detection. It automatically discovers news websites on its own. Then, extraction. It pulls out all the key data about journalists. Third, intelligence. This is where it uses powerful algorithms and natural language processing. That's basically AI that can read and understand language like we do to make sense of everything. And finally, visualization, where it turns all that data into interactive maps and insights you can actually use. Now, let's pop the hood and see what's really driving this thing. And this is where it gets really interesting. The whole system is built on four key innovations that you can really think of as its technological superpowers. Superpower number one is something called Journalist DNA Fingerprinting. And the whole idea here is that every single writer has a unique stylistic signature, a pattern that's as distinct as their actual fingerprint. So by analyzing these deep linguistic patterns, the system creates a totally unique profile for every author. And get this, it's so powerful that it can identify who wrote an article even if there's no name attached to it, or even if they're using a pen name. And this so-called DNA isn't just one thing. It's a combination of all sorts of factors. The system's looking at their sentence patterns, how long or complex they are. It analyzes their vocabulary, their publishing rhythm, like when and how often they post, and even their specific, quirky punctuation habits. It's a complete picture of their writing style. Okay, on to superpower number two. This one is all about making sense of the chaos. It's called the Journalist Orbit System, and it's just a brilliant way to take those invisible networks we talked about earlier and make them suddenly visible and super easy to understand. It uses this simple but really effective solar system metaphor. So at the center, you have the news outlet, that's the sun. The journalists are the planets orbiting around it. Now, how fast a planet orbits tells you how often that journalist publishes, and how big the planet is shows you how many articles they've written. All of a sudden, you can see the entire structure of a news team in one glance. All right, superpower number three is all about speed. It's called Real-Time Outbreak Detection. This is where the system basically becomes a seismograph for news, capable of tracking how one story or idea can suddenly explode and spread across the entire media landscape. And here's a perfect case study. In one event, the system detected a massive spike in coverage on a single topic. We're talking over 340%. That's not a small jump. That is a huge, sudden explosion of media attention. So, how did that happen? Well, the system didn't just see the spike. It identified the source. It found that the initial spread was kicked off by a core group of just 12 journalists. It pinpointed the exact people who lit the fuse. And here's the most incredible part. It tracked the entire event, from that first article to full-blown, widespread coverage. And the whole thing happened in just 4 hours. That's the speed of news today. And that brings us to our final superpower, which gets into the nitty-gritty of how all this data is collected in the first place. It's a method called adaptive honeycomb scraping, and it's a much, much smarter way to gather information from all over the web. So instead of just crawling a site line by line, this thing uses a hexagonal pattern that's a whopping 40% faster. Plus, it's smart. It can actually detect the parts of a website that are packed with journalist info, like author pages, and it prioritizes those areas. It's not just faster, it's more targeted. Okay, so we have these four awesome superpowers: the DNA, the orbits, the outbreak detection.
But the really big question is, how does the system turn this massive ocean of raw data into insights you can actually act on?
Well, the secret sauce is in its hybrid database. It uses two different types of databases that work together. One is a time series database, which is perfect for tracking activity over time. That's the win. It combines that with a graph database, which is amazing at mapping connections and relationships. That's the who. Put them together and you get the whole story. And the final output is just incredible. You get a set of unique metrics that you just won't find anywhere else. For example, the Echo score actually measures a journalist's influence. The break rate tells you how often they're the first one to publish an exclusive story. It can even perform rivalry detection by finding two journalists who are consistently competing on the same beat. So when you put all of this together, what you're really looking at is a fundamental shift. We're moving away from that old world of manually and reactively monitoring media after the fact, and we're stepping into a new era of autonomous systems that can give us predictive intelligence. Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought to chew on. A system like this is incredible at automating the what's being said, who's saying it, how it's spreading. But as that gets easier, how does it change the job for us humans? Does it free us up to focus on the much more complex and maybe more important question of why? Why does any of this matter? Now that is something to think about.